Yeah, they're on time. Here comes Jay. There he is.
Good morning.
Good
Hello
afternoon.
Sorry for the delay.
All right. Yeah, we've got audio and video on you, Jay. Looks good.
How is everyone?
Okay.
Good.
All right. Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Smith, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, I call the meeting to order. So we have a public comment period. So do we have anybody to comment? I don't.
So if you'd like to comment to the Economic Development Authority, you can click the raise hand icon in the Zoom webinar. We've got 4 people in the audience right now. And Mr. Chairman, I don't see any hands raised.
Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. So we have our minutes from the June 9th meeting and the treasurer's reports for April, May, June, and July, August, and September. So I had a couple comments. Should I say that now, or what should we do?
Sure, that's fine. I did want to make a note. Ed, you brought to our attention a clerical error on the May item, and we did correct that, although we did not resend the packet. So that item that you noted on the May financials has been rectified, and we'll resend that after the meeting, but I just wanted to point that out to you.
Yeah, that was just the year-to-date amount for the S&L rent ended up on the wrong line. So
Correct.
that's fine. So do we have a motion to accept the minutes and the treasurer's reports?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Maybe second.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion about the minutes and the treasurer's reports? So I guess all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Motion passes. So we have some new business overview of COVID response presentation. Chris, that's you, I guess?
Yes, absolutely. I'll be happy to do that. I did just want to give a chance since we have had some changes since our last meeting. We have 2 new members, and actually, since this group probably officially last met, Mr. Byer and Ms. Boyd's terms ended and they departed. We were not able to see them off and wish them well and honor them with a plaque for their service. We do have those plaques, and we intend to do that when we meet in person again. Jim Cawthon was appointed, and he's on the line. And then Addison Barnhart was recently appointed, and he's on as well. So they're 2 brand new members. We might just want to give them a second to introduce themselves, and then I'll launch into this overview. Jim, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Jim Cawthon. Was born and raised in Charlottesville. Moved out of Charlottesville after law school. My wife and I moved back here about 10 years ago. I actually work, even though I lived in Charlottesville, I split my time between Charlottesville and New York. I teach at the City University of New York. I've been involved in economic development for a good while, really through my wife, volunteering at organizations, Helen Cawthon, who's the president of the Central Virginia Partnership for Economic Development. And so I'm glad to support the city's efforts.
Thank you, Jim. Addison?
Yes, Addison Barnhart. I too am from Charlottesville and moved back here about 10 years ago after law school. And I'm a practicing attorney. I started off doing mainly trial work, but have for the last 6 years done mostly real estate. work and development, closings, kind of everything involving, and litigation as well, everything involving real estate law. And yeah, I'm excited to be on the board and on the authority and to serve with you guys.
Okay, thanks, Addison. Thank you both for agreeing to serve. We certainly do appreciate it. If anybody's wondering, Ethan Dunstan resigned in about September. His term was nearly ending, but he did choose to resign in September. And Nicole Fernandez has had a transition to a different job opportunity within her organization that is going to move her to Richmond. So she has also resigned. So that's the reason for the additional vacancies that you see and why we simply have the 4 here today. Adrian could not make the call, Adrian Feltz, but he is still an active member. So in any case, it's been a little while since we've gotten together. I wanted to provide an overview of what we have been doing as the Office of Economic Development with the support of the EDA to assist local businesses and individuals during COVID, and wanted to remind the 2 board members that were on the board back in March, but you all really took an initiative to get this started. Back in March, we met on March 31st and approved an emergency resolution to reallocate some existing funds and then add to those funds and allocate $350,000 to start the initial kind of relief efforts, if you will, for businesses that were immediately impacted by COVID early on. Since that time, and I'm going to walk you through this, the federal CARES money has come through and some other things, but wanted to remind the board and thank the board for their early and swift action to get started on some relief here in Charlottesville. So I'm going to walk through a quick PowerPoint here just to guide you all through that. Are you all seeing that on your screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so as I mentioned, you all took some action, and one of the items that was initially spun up very quickly was called the BRACE grant, and that's a play on the existing ACE grant that the EDA has had in place for many years. And so we altered that to build resiliency among Charlottesville entrepreneurs, and that was a little under $85,000, was quickly pushed out the door in small average $1,200 grant amounts to help folks deal with immediate issues and help them focus on a little bit more resiliency as they adapt their models. We had 150 applications and we were able to award 69 awards, and that took place in late April and early May. And Jason Ness of our team led most of that effort with support from Zoe Smith as well. The Business Equity Fund is an existing fund that is administered by CIC, the Community Investment Collaborative. It was established about 2 years ago by the city with an initial, let's see here. I'm being reminded that I need to set this onto full screen. Let's see. Bear with me. Is that better? Hopefully you can see a little better now. In any case, whoops. So the Business Equity Fund had been established by the city about 2 years ago. The EDA made a contribution to that fund about a year ago, and with the March 31st resolution, went ahead and added to that with another $100,000 contribution to the equity fund. So those funds were in place at CIC. And as of this update, half of those dollars, a little more than half of those dollars had been pushed out to recipients at a maximum of $5,000 per business. The remaining funds have been transferred over, and those will be available for folks to apply for in the coming year. Let's see. There we go. That might be even better. All right, let's see if we can do this here. These are just some slides showing a couple of our recipients of both the Brace and the BEF early on. And some of those you may recognize as local businesses and business owners. We also established with the county the Business Recovery Fund. This was a joint effort where the county's Office of Economic Development and our office got together along with CIC and created a brand new revolving loan fund. The county put in 200,000, the city put in 100,000, and then we were able to get some matching dollars from the private sector. So it was a $600,000 fund, and those funds have largely been dispersed at this point. We had quite a few inquiries for those. Applications were reviewed, and most of those were actually issued in the July timeframe. There's a few remaining funds there that will continue to be dispersed. The thing about this one is it's intended to revolve, so those funds will come back to CIC and be able to be reloaned at favorable rates to local businesses. GoHire is an existing program that we've had in place for quite some time, and the March 31st resolution moved $100,000, additional $100,000 into GoHire. And those monies have been awarded, and we had about 30 awardees there with an average grant of a little over $3,000 per individual. Those are the four initial funds or initiatives that were funded through the EDA's resolution for March 31st. I've got a couple other, this is just a partnership we did with the county to provide some informational resources to folks for free early on during the pandemic. Project Rebound is another initiative that we, along with the university and the county of Albemarle, as well with leadership from the Chamber of Commerce, have participated in. There was no funding here necessarily, but it was a collaborative effort to engage in a community-led and 300 folks, business folks from across 7 different sectors participated in this process, which was unique in that it was done entirely on Zoom, facilitated by some expertise out of the university. And it was funded with a Go Virginia grant, which some of you may have heard of. It was a Go Virginia, which is the state grant for regions, adjusted some of their criteria to allow emergency type grants. And we were able, through the Chamber's leadership, to apply and receive a grant to help fund Project Rebound. That report has been issued, and there continues to be some ongoing kind of follow-up from that led by the Chamber, but wanted to mention that as one of the recovery items. The Small Business Relief Grant is the major city-based grant fund that was funded through the CARES Act. All the localities in Virginia received money from the federal government through the state, and it was passed on to the localities based on a per capita basis. The city was eligible to receive, I believe, it was 8.2 million total over the 2 rounds of funding. The first round was 4.1 million, and that round happened in June. And we advocated for 20% of that funding to be applied for small business grants. And the council did approve that, and the EDA became the mechanism by which those grants were administered. So Jason Ness on our staff, Zoe Smith on our staff, as well as Trish and I worked to get the applications, which were done entirely online, in place. And those funds were dispersed in the July timeframe for round 1, and then round 2 are just now being dispersed. We received another 825,000, so we had two rounds totaled 1.65 million, about 360 applications total, and 249 grants have been or are being processed currently. So that was a pretty heavy lift. Once again, the EDA served as the conduit whereby those funds were granted to the actual businesses. The focus of the Small Business Relief Grant was on those most impacted. So folks in the service industries, restaurants, retailers, hospitality, and the like, retail service, were given higher priority, and we're the recipients by and large of nearly all of these funds. So this was the major initiative that has benefited local businesses. A small portion of that $1.6 million was not allocated directly as grants to businesses, but was set aside to help with the commercial corridor support. And that's the downtown, the West Main, the corner areas, key commercial corridors throughout the city. Those funds are still being deployed, and you've seen evidence of those around the community if you've been out, in terms of hand washing stations, complimentary parking on the weekends at the garages. We've done some special curbside parking for retailers and for customers to have easy access to pick up and drop off, things of that nature. Advertising associated with this, supporting the downtown and the commercial areas. You'll see a little bit more of that coming out as well. So that's how a portion of those funds were spent as well. This is not ours, but this is a state grant program that is still active. And if you hear from folks who are still interested and in need of some support, this grant called Rebuild Virginia is still accepting applications, and they have changed the criteria a couple of times, made it a little easier for folks to apply, and they've actually increased the grant amount up to $100,000 per business. So it continues to be a rolling application, and would encourage folks to make use of that if they're interested. In any case, that covers the highlights of what I wanted to share with you all regarding, specifically regarding the initial resolution that the EDA passed back in March to kind of kick off this whole COVID response and recovery effort, which is ongoing, as you all know. But just wanted to give you all that update. Felt it would be useful for you all to have that information as we continue to do the business of the city and the EDA. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer or try and answer them if anybody has any questions about that presentation. And you all appear muted if you are trying to say anything. So just a heads up.
I don't see any hands raised either.
As we all adjust. Okay. All right. Well, then that covers that item. There's just a few other informational update items that I wanted to share with the group. For the newer members, this first item, the Friendship Court Performance Agreement, won't mean much, but members that have been on the board for at least the last year are aware that about a year ago, the EDA was approached to participate in a performance agreement with the Friendship Court Redevelopment. And that is being led by the Piedmont Housing Alliance. They are the owners of that property, and they intend to redevelop the entire property. And they sought some assistance from the city in the form of in a couple of forms. One was some capital dollars from the city. The other was to solicit a performance agreement whereby they would receive some of the additional incremental taxes created by the project once the project is complete. And the EDA is the conduit for these type of agreements and has done several of those in the past, typically associated with job creation and capital investment for businesses. In this case, it's not as much job creation, but it's affordable housing creation and preservation, as well as some minimal job opportunities on the site and some commercial space on the site. In any case, there's no, these are city dollars that are passed through to the EDA. So It's similar to the previous agreements in which after the project is complete, we'll verify the actual increment that was created by the project, so the tax increment. And so that's the additional real estate tax that's created by the new development above the existing base. And that becomes what we would pass through to the entity once they meet the criteria, create the specified number of affordable units, and have certificates of occupancy for them, meet a couple of other criteria such as timeliness and things of that nature. So that agreement was ratified by the EDA about a year ago at the request of PHA, who had intended to move forward at that time. They got delayed a bit, as many things have been, and just came around to getting in front of our city council about a month ago to get the final sign off from the city council. So wanted to update you all. Your vice chair, Mr. Smits, has signed that agreement as it was ratified by the EDA a year ago. The city council has ratified it just as I mentioned about a month ago. There's no activity, there's no action to take by this board at this time. And in fact, the project has to be put in place, which will take at least 2 years, after which the folks at PHA will trigger the agreement, and then we'll verify things and proceed with the payback of the incremental increase created by the project. So just wanted to make you all aware that that had happened, since there was a bit of a time lapse since that had occurred. The other item, the other two items, one has to do with our annual audit. We have an annual audit that's conducted by, in this case, Brown Edwards is our audit firm, and they've been on with us for a couple of years. This is a fiscal year audit, so it's the most recently completed fiscal year, which ended June 30th, and so the preceding 12 months. And they are in process of wrapping that up, as is our typical schedule. They wrap that up right about this time of year and present to the board in December. They're on schedule to do that, and so we anticipate that at the December meeting, that will be an agenda item. That meeting is scheduled for December 8th. That's the second Tuesday in December. So you might want to highlight that on your calendar. We do expect to have that meeting, and they will be in attendance, likely virtually, but shouldn't be a big difference for those folks. And they will present the highlights of the audit and give a chance for the board to ask any questions at that time. We have not encountered any issues. I don't expect that we will have any with regard to the FY20 audit, but that will be coming to you shortly. The other item is a new requirement for EDAs throughout the state. And it's a new requirement in this form, but those of you who've been on the board know that we have not had a formal training, a video training course, but we have had occasional conversations and an annual kind of reminder about the Freedom of Information Act, as well as the Conflict of Information Act, both of which apply to public bodies. And the General Assembly saw fit to tweak the state law to require additional public bodies to go through this training. They've created a training. It's a video that requires some active participation to reach the end of it. And a certificate is awarded somehow at the end. I have not completed it myself. I do need to do it. All of you are going to need to do it as well by the end of this year. So by December 31st is the deadline for that. So I will certainly remind you of that and provide you with the link. It's in today's agenda. I understand it to take about 45 minutes. And I think at the end, there's a button you push and you type in your name, and it would provide you with a certificate that would be your proof of completion. So if anybody's done that, you get a bonus point. And let me send your certificate in so we can put it in the file with our clerk's office. If not, I will remind you all and make sure that we get everybody in compliance before the end of the year.
So you want us to send them, Who should we send them to?
You can send them to me and I'll make sure the clerk gets them. Our clerk of council manages all that information.
Okay.
We had hoped to do this kind of more in person and make it more interactive and kind of do it as a group when we had first heard about this requirement, and actually potentially even consider doing it in conjunction with the Albemarle County EDA, which also has the same requirement, kind of as a joint activity. But given where we are with COVID at the moment and meeting virtually, we're probably going to forego that for this year and just request that folks complete it individually and get the certificate popped out that way. So that's the updates there. I don't have anything else specific. I don't know if there's questions about any of those items that folks might have. If not, I do want to thank Ed, who is technically our vice chair, for serving in the capacity of the chair today. And he has agreed to do that at the next meeting as well. We typically have elections in conjunction with the final meeting of the calendar year. And so we would likely elect a chair and a vice chair for the next calendar year at our next meeting, towards the end of that meeting. But Ed has graciously agreed to chair today's meeting and the next meeting in the absence of our Mr. Dunstan, who was serving as chair. So thank you for doing that, Ed. And that'll be another agenda item for next month's meeting. So be thinking about your candidacy and campaign slogans and whatnot. Prepare for that meeting.
All right. So do I have a motion to dismiss, to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion passes.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
And we'll see you next
Okay.
time.
All right.
Thanks.